Buongiorno dal Palazzo delle Esposizioni per questo incontro che è sotto l'ombrello della Carta di Roma 2020 e che affronta il tema della comunità e dei beni comuni. Ringrazio prima di tutto chi ci sta seguendo in streaming e chi ci segue in streaming potrà seguire tutto il dibattito in italiano, ovviamente cliccando sulla finestra apposita nello streaming dei nostri canali. Noi parleremo in inglese per la presenza dei, interlocutori internazionali. And thanks to our guests. Today our theme is common goods and the concept itself of common and commonality. This meeting happens under the umbrella of the Rome Charter 2020, a document that was signed by many different cities from all over the world here in Rome last year, and that Palazzo delle Esposizioni, that hosts today this meeting, has the task of supporting and proposing and relaunching on an international level. Rome Charter 2020 is about the need for a full and aware participation of everybody to cultural life, and is about removing all the obstacles that don't allow people to fully participate in cultural life of their community. Rome Charter 2020 has been signed under the support of the UCLG, the International Union of Cities and Local Government, and is considered to be a premise, a fundamental premise to the so-called Agenda 2030 that has to do with the Sustainable Development Goals. So the possibility of living in a better earth under the ideas of sustainability and shared goods. Now, our conviction is that without a full participation to cultural life, the goals of the sustainability, of equality, of social justice will be much more difficult to be reached. And that's why we, as a cultural institution, an artistic institution, and ourselves as artists, curators, or active participants to cultural life, strongly support this idea and propose these appointments like this meeting today. Today's conversation, today we have the pleasure of having here in Palazzo delle Esposizioni in Rome 3 members of the collective from Moscow,
St. Petersburg, mostly.
And St. Petersburg, the Russian collective Chto Delat. Chto Delat, who, for whoever is not expert in Russian history, means what has to be done, and it's actually a famous, iconic sentence by Lenin. Olga Yegoreva is today with us, Dmitry Vilensky, and Nikolai Oleynikov, who are 3 members of the very numerous collective that is also made of philosophers, sociologists, and but you
poets,
are poets,
choreographer.
Mm-hmm. But here you are mostly as artists, and you are in Rome because you are having a very, I think, relevant, important exhibition in the gallery Apart in our city, and it's an exhibition that I think will be that is for Roman audience a very interesting and rich occasion to know your work better. It has been such for myself too. And why are you here? I think because your work, your approach is very relevant in the sense that shows how to promote, maybe on small scale, maybe on very local issues or situations or contexts, show how is it possible to promote participation, cultural participation. What are the principles? What are the attitudes? What are the possibilities that allow small communities, maybe in remote or so-called peripheral context, to self-promote and share with others and diffuse cultural participation. Now, you have chosen the term and maybe the reference to Zapatismo, to the experience in Chiapas in Mexico, as a possible point of reference of this method, grassroots, from below and not from on top, so down, bottom up, and not vice versa. And I think your work and your show demonstrate that this is actually possible. Today is with us Théo-Mario Coppola, who is an art curator based in Paris. Mario Coppola has already been a guest in Rome, and I remember maybe one of the last things he has done in our city, that is the White Night at the Villa Medici French Institute, French Academy in Rome in 2018. I think that I can say that Théo-Mario Coppola share with Chto Delat an approach to contemporary art and to art research, artistic research, strongly signed by a political vision, a radical political vision, and an experimental approach, experimental attitude. And Theo will speak and interview our guests on Chto Delat today, but I would propose to start with a small fragment of one of the videos that are presented in the shows here in Rome. The video's title is it's actually one of a collection of 3 videos that you have produced in the last few years, and one is made in Greece, one is made in Russian, and one is made in Italy. And the first one that we look at a fragment, at a teaser, is the one that you have done in Greece. And the title of this video, maybe you should help me, is
What we hide in our pockets.
What we hide in our pockets, about the footprints, what we hide in our pockets. Greece 2021. So we start from 3 minutes from this video.
Μιλούν για την ανάγκη να διδαχτούμε τις διαφορετικές γεωγραφίες και τις διαφορετικές ιστορίες των λαών. Δεν είναι μία γεωγραφία, αυτή που η Δύση παρουσιάζει με κέντρο τον εαυτό της, είναι πολλές, ανάλογα που βρισκόμαστε. Δεν είναι μία ιστορία, αυτή που η Δύση παρουσιάζει ως παγκόσμια ιστορία, ένα άθροισμα από ιστορίες. Επομένως, ήταν και για μας ένα μεγάλο μάθημα. Μας έδειξε ότι ο κόσμος δεν έχει κέντρο την Ευρώπη που ξέρουμε, έχει πολλά κέντρα, πολλούς τρόπους να βλέπει κανείς τη ζωή και να της δίνει νόημα. Αυτή λοιπόν η εμπειρία από την σχέση μας με τους συντρόφους Ζαπατίστας ήταν μια εμπειρία προσωπικά, αλλά αν έχω την εντύπωση, επειδή μίλησα με πολλούς άλλους που πήγαν και βοήθησαν, θα σας δείξω σε ποιο έργο, από αυτές που σου αλλάζουν κάπως τα μέτρα που παίρνεις για τη...
Όλη με τη ζωή ψάχνω κλειδιά. Στις τσέπες, στις καναπέδες, στα άπλυτα και στα σιρτάρια. Μα τι στο καλό με πέτυχε στη πόρτα. Έχω ραντεβού σε 5 λεπτά. Στην άκρη της πόλης. Πώς θα προλαβαίνω. Αυτό το πρόβλημα το συνειδητοποίησα μετά από 10 χρόνια. Κατάλαβα ότι είναι τα κλειδιά. Είναι πολύ σημαντικά να ξέρεις που είναι για να βγεις, για να πας στο ραντεβού σου. Να ξαναγυρνάς και να ξέρεις που είναι, που βρίσκονται. Αυτό μπορεί να μην έχω πολύ σημαντικό αυτό το αντικείμενο. Ίσως δεν μου έβγαζε κάτι, ξέρω, στη ζωή μου. Ή δεν με νοιάζει, ξέρω, αυτό το σπίτι. Ή κάτι άλλο. Αλλά το κατάλαβα μετά από χρόνια ότι είναι πολύ σημαντικό. Αυτό.
Για να διηγηθούμε την ιστορία της εξουσίας.
Τα αγάλματα και τα πουλιά. Για να διηγηθούμε την ιστορία της εξουσίας.
Direttamente, senza che prima parli.
Την εξουσία δεν την ενδιαφέρει η συνένεση, η συμφωνία, ο λόγος που γεννιέται στο καθένα. Η συμφωνία, ο λόγος που γεννιέται στο καθένα. Την ενδιαφέρει η κυριαρχία. Ο έξυπνος κόσμος την εξουσία προσποιείται πως είναι περίπλοκος, αλλά είναι αρκετά απλός. Αποτελείται από δόγματα και αγάλματα. Εξέργηση. Είναι μόλις ένα από τα χιλιάδες πουλιά κοπητών.
Είναι μόλις
εξέγερση, όπως κάθε πουλί γεννιέται.
Η εξέγερση, όπως κάθε πουλί, γεννιέται,
μεγαλώνει, τραγουδάει. Αναπαράγεται με το άλλο και μέσα στο άλλο. Παθαίνει και, όπως πρέπει να κάνουν τα πουλιά, χέζει τα γάλματα.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for this conversation with Chto Delat. Thank you to Palazzo delle Esposizioni and to Rome Charter. This is a great pleasure to be in conversation with you, Chto Delat, today. First of all, I would like to say that what Chto Delat is doing by experimenting, by working with communities, and by bringing new knowledge or interactions is important today. What you are bringing is within visual arts, but is also beyond disciplines and is in the society today. What you are doing is important because it's contributing to changing the way we are together, we are communing, we are sharing, and we are building not only a future, but a present, because I think this is something that is very much in your way of being, to be present, to be here and now, and to be in connections with others. And that's the way you are radical, and that's the way you are generous. So I think this is important to say so. And without you, I also think that it would be difficult to continue this everyday revolution that we need to change the world. Saying that as an introduction, I would like to first ask you a question on a very important notion, not only on the perspective of your work, but also an important notion today for cities, for major cities, but also for new connections and way to bring a difference in the way we live. And it is related to the notion of utopia. So the extract we've just seen about the footprints, what we hide in the pockets, and all the shadows of hope, which is a magnificent title, I have to say, and a film in 7 portraits was created in cooperation with the Piraeus Open School for Migrants in Athens. So this is a work that is not on communities, but with communities. And that's part of your methodology. So you're not commenting, you are collaborating. And you are elaborating with others, which is also very important, because you're not taking a position outside of the world, but within the world. And the activities of the Piraeus Open School for Migrants in Athens were initiated in 2005, and they are taking place in a public school. And their social role is central in bringing knowledge, solidarity to immigrants in a situation of vulnerability, and especially in the context of an economical crisis and its consequences. And so with thousands of students and hundreds of teachers, the energy and the collective action that is brought by their initiative has greatly contributed to renewing what can be intended as utopia. How the notion of utopia is envisioned in this context. To you, is it a form of resistance, or is it the beginning for a new world?
No, just one sentence. Thank you for your introduction.
We're very proud to be introduced in such a way, very generously. Yeah, but answering your question immediately and just in a couple of words, yes, both and more. Not only utopia, not only resistance, but a way of living, and the only way, probably the only way to live with other communities in solidarity, to participate, as Cesare was saying, and underlining the significance and importance of participation of the people into the political life, into the cultural life, fully as much as possible. And to contextualize a little bit both your question, the fragment of the video, and the method, which will be a little bit introduced a little later, of course. But what brings things together here and for us since many, many years is this inspiration with how Zapatistas are doing it, how Zapatistas are participating daily, on a daily basis, into the life of their communities, right? So governing by obeying is one of the key political principles, right? So there is no government, exactly as Cesare was again underlining, no governing from above to the lower classes, to the society. The society is turned the other way around. The society, by participation of everyone, is made in a certain way to be governed by themselves. So it is self-governing. And to participate in the cultural life for Zapatistas as well, since years and years, is a very key thing, because and they confirmed it by inviting international artists in solidarity, musicians in solidarity, choreographers in solidarity to Chiapas to participate in the festival that is called Comp Arte. Comp Arte is a game of words which connects together two key concepts: comrade and and the art. So the art and culture for Zapatistas as well, a very important thing. And for us, the Zapatistas politics, as for the artistic collective that is living and staying and standing in our own communities and creating our own communities in St. Petersburg, is a huge inspiration to connect things together. And that's why it was very important, your invitation, Théo-Mario, to connect together our trilogy with the piece that is made with the people from Athens, from Piraeus School of Solidarity, and as you explained, this is a very important, in our days in Europe, initiative that comes from below. The teachers and organizers and political activists came together in order to support the people who migrated to the south of Europe. And that's an incredible inspiration yet again for us as a collective.
I don't know what can I add. But actually the question was about utopia or form of resistance. It very much depends how you determine utopia, something non-existing or something which kind of has certain seeds and certain potentiality in certain moment. But I guess the situation, like everywhere, is pretty desperate, and Athens politically is devastating in many ways. And actually, what people do, it is really very dramatic attempt to keep that certain accessibility for the basic education, to help people to protect their dignity. So, but frankly to say, I wouldn't say it's utopia, it's kind of last partisanship of resistance in a very, very desperate way, and we should totally respect, like in many places in Europe. So there is not so much utopia left, but we're really defending the last frontier. Last frontier.
Yeah, and about utopia, why Zapatistas' experience is so important for us? Because it is utopia which was realized, and they try to keep it, you know. And of course they realized it in a very small community, but they continue to keep it. And this is why, for us, it's like, you know, the experience which we can consider and try to continue in our own practice.
If I can add something before pass the word again to Théo-Mario, I see a very interesting coincidence of the concept of utopia that has to do with impossibility and lack of a place, no? With a reality that acts on a small but very concrete and real space and place. And I think that a certain kind of art, maybe a kind of approach, artistic approach that maybe we share at least partly, or that anyway we are talking about tonight, has to do with this, with make the concept of utopia, imagination, and very concrete reality and possibilities to come together. Théo.
Cesare, this is the perfect way to make a tie with the second question I have, because when you say that this is something concrete, so tangible, very pragmatic, I would say that an important dimension of Chto Delat's work is also the relation to public space, which is very tangible, and public space in relation to what we share. So in the film, we have seen an extract from, there are different portraits and interviews that we go through in the film, and they are made in an unusual perspective, because you are in unusual spaces that are the usual spaces we go through in buildings, like staircases or corridors. And this methodology is also recalling the peripatetic philosophers and scholars in the antique age who were going around, going outside. Another experience that is not very well known from a European perspective is the school of Shantiniketan in India. Usually we refer to Black Mountain College, but there is also Shantiniketan, which was and still is a very inspiring dynamic for horizontal sharing. And so in the film, you can see the presence of the public space, which is very important. And knowledge is not only inside the classroom, it's everywhere, everywhere in the world. You can learn everywhere, in every situation. And this is very much about how do we experience our relation to public space. Public space as a place for learning and as a way to learn. So I would like also to understand more, if you could explain how do you envision what can be done together in public space. I think this is a very important part of your work through performances, actions, works, but also within the work. When you visit a Chto Delat's exhibition, you're not only in an exhibition, you always brought beyond the exhibition space. You're outside, you're with the people, you're in the public space, because that's the way you work. So I think this is an important dimension also to address.
Public space, school,
School
school of Rose, school of Rose.
You know, it's thanks again for your insights and observation. You know, actually, that the film which we did in Athens was very special because of that collaboration. At the same time, in Russia right now, in public space, not so much can be done, almost nothing can be done because of the current kind of repression and criminalization of any public activity. At the same time, again, I'm sorry for right now, I'm not in very optimistic mode today, but at the same time, for me right now, it's more productive, and actually also what I see in that particular experience of Solidarity School in Athens is not experience of public space, it's experience of counter-public space. Because the reactionary public space, which we face all over Europe, from Italy to Norway, from Norway to Russia, of course, at different degrees of degradation. So that we actually would like to discuss how to rescue it, how to save it from neo-fashion, from nationalization, from different type of imposed restrictions, from medicamentization, from pharma control, and all that stuff. That's really kind of new challenges. And actually, again, like, if we can speculate like in the wake of Nancy Fraser, so the notion of counter-public, right now I think much more productive for the notion of the public. And this also places where you can regroup and propose the values which may be not accepted in society at the moment, but we must insist that they should be really protected from public, you know, and create completely kind of new situation, so that regrouping and articulation. And that actually our task, in particular in Russian situation. I don't know, maybe Nikolai can speak more about our experience in Lecce, and in Athens it was really because that actually the whole history of Solidarity School education in Athens, it's actually permanently under the threat, permanently defending that remnants what exist, and people build it again and again. So that's my impression. But at the same time, to walk in the street, to walk with the communities, and also not just with existing communities, but actually utopia about creating communities like land which not exist. That's actually, here artist has a little bit particular experience and competence so, compared to social workers who are actually on front line, much more than artists, like journalists who make investigation, who are permanently under the threat of being killed and so on. Art is much more safe space, but at the same time, I would really say that it's also important and need a certain kind of consideration, and yeah, that's it.
Okay. Is it working? Yeah? Okay. So, I started to think now how many efforts of so many people you can see on that 3 monitors in the gallery, in the art gallery now, because in our films we don't have any actors or actresses. All of them are participants, and all together we are getting together and consider and learning together, and you know, they don't have their own role, which is written or prepared or something like that. All of them are creating their own line of behavior on the film, you know. And that's very special type of doing movie, doing videos, doing art itself, you know, because it's not only our own pieces of art. It is really a result of
shared
sharing.
situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the role of artist in this case would be to create the situation of sharing, of
Right.
staying together, bringing up the questions, inviting people to think about those questions with certain kind of methodologies that we elaborated through years and years and years and still are in the process, right? Our collective survives 18 years. Like, imagine 10 people who are together for 18 years. We elaborated through these years a new method of being together. That's a very important and tangible result. We are staying together no matter what. We are staying together thankfully to the process, the painful process that we went through to arrive to celebrate our 18 years of togetherness. So for our school, for example, the School of Engaged Art that we are holding in St. Petersburg, it's an experimental, autonomous in a way, grassroots initiative that we created more than 6 years ago in St. Petersburg. This is what we are sharing with our participants, the way of being together, the way of becoming a collective. That's also one of the important tools for us to create art as such.
Can I add something? School, learning, a group of artists that create a collective and make art together. I think the model we are talking about takes inspiration from the concept of learning, from the experience of learning, and goes one step beyond. Because I think that what artists do, among them and with others, is to propose models of hospitality of ideas. And when you become, so to say, you know, hospitable for others' idea, and you give them back with like, you know, an artistic elaboration, an elaboration that has to do with imagination, then in the group that is working together in the school, so to say, now everyone can experience the moment of having ideas belonging to everyone. So we are all sharing a certain ideas, and that is a moment of joy, and that is a moment when we experience that the idea of belonging, individual belonging, can be, you know, passed, can offer another model where people are more happy, because when we share a common idea, in a school, you know, in an horizontal circular school methodology learning approach, then you can reach exactly that point of being, you know, more happy than because everyone is feeling that an idea is you know, belongs to you, and at the same time to everyone else, and that everyone has contributed to it.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And I guess it's very important that we're always waiting for some ideas from our participants, you know? It's not like we already have the idea and please give me something like I want to have, yeah? But no, we are just waiting and sitting and waiting. We are a little bit like Zapatistas. We are never in a hurry, you know? We are already
because we have a long way to go, as they say. We're not
and
in a hurry, we're not in a rush. We have a long way to go.
Yes, and we always, this is why we usually when we are doing films, and we create kind of temporary schools. And sometimes it is longer, sometimes shorter, but it's always temporary school. And we, all of us, the whole group, I mean, we and the participant of our films are sitting and just thinking about that. The last time it was, for example, no, but I mean, Zapatista is always the main idea, you know?
Theo, what do you think about it?
Getting back to what you said, Nikolai, regarding the transition from the concept of public space to art as a way to do things together, this is recalling me a text by Brazilian art critic Mario Pedrosa, who in '67, for describing the work of Elio Chisica, the Parangole, which are sculpture, performative sculptures and clothes that you can wear and you can make people interact with, wrote that this was the first postmodern work. And for him, postmodernity was not the postmodernity that was then described in other countries as what would be coming after capitalism, but the tangible answer of art as togetherness and how we could bring togetherness in art. So I think this is one of the major points of Chto Delat's work, is that art is never at the service of something or anticipating an answer, but art is a practice and art is a way to share. And so you don't have the answer until you share with people. And this is also getting back to what you just said, Olga, the fact that you wait and see. You come with people and you're not imposing. You expect things to happen, but you're not, you can't know before. You do it with the people. So I think this is very much important, that art is not predictable. Art is what you do with people. If you don't do it, nothing will happen. So it's by doing that we learn. It's by practicing that we change. And I think this is very much important. Culture is not a little box that we give one to each other. It's what we do. It's not a content, it's life. And I think this is also very important, that we go back to this radical and simple idea of being together for bringing art to life. And this is bringing me to another idea with Zapatism and Neo-Zapatism, which are the new interpretation of Zapatism. How can Zapatism can inspire new forms of collective actions? What are the collective actions you would like to see today?
You know, actually, it brings us into long discussion on terminology, because actually Zapatism might be related to original Mexican Revolution of 1917 or even longer period. And Neo-Zapatism was once used in certain circles as a kind of related to whatever we call right now as Zapatism, but right now mostly we use Zapatism related to 1994 uprising and current situation of community in Chiapas. First of all, actually, you know, people of our age remember many stories which nobody remember, unfortunately. And we should remind them. That would be really good to share these ideas. So actually, Zapatista, with their very funny intergalactic gatherings from 97, 98, they actually trigger the World Social Forum, or the International Movement on Social Forum, which unfortunately right now transformed and dying out. We were actually part of that great international movement, representing or responsible for cultural program of Russian Social Forum, participating in the European Social Forum in 2003 in Paris and 2006 in Athens. So it was actually, and in Petersburg when it happened. And actually, but I guess it was really incredibly, if you talk with many activists, and actually, we are not making film, maybe Olga later will explain better. We are not making film about Zapatism at all. We are not making film about situation in Chiapas. We are not making documentary. And we are absolutely not legitimate to tell anything about it because we have zero knowledge. What we can tell is that what we learn from certain kind of manifestation, communication, declaration, poetry, artistic production of Zapatista, how it came into our life, influenced our, and transformed. If you talk with Italian activists of our generation, or Greek activists, after political collapse of 80s, the recovery came only with Zapatista uprising, with the first kind of brigade or caravans which came to Chiapas. That brought hope back to Europe. And right now was very interesting because, you know, we did this exhibition with a very kind of fictional idea of Zapatista embassy, which might one day came or maybe invisibly present somewhere, maybe in Russia, maybe in Europe, I don't know. And finally, you know, this summer, we actually all again the same network celebrating their visit to Europe. And it was really
for the first time in their life because they always was saying, we never leave our territories. We are not interested. We are working with our land. That's it. And right now, 500 years after the invasion of the Europeans into the Americas, they are coming back taking a little boat called Montaña with a lot of like sense of self-irony and so on, and arriving very soon in Portugal. And they're going to stay with European activists and cultural activists as well, discussing how to stay in solidarity together in the future. So it's also the way of commoning the struggle, commoning the knowledge, commoning the very poetics of the gesture. That's also very inspiring for us as an artistic collective, because we were following not only the communiques, but also they act in a very poetical way.
So, and I guess, so if we speculate on that kind of situation, it's really interesting that the contribution and how that true kind of genuine internationalization of struggles really can contribute to many local situations, but in different way, because Zapatista simply say, no copy, do what you need to do in your situation. And of course that situation, which we challenged in Russia, it's quite different from what might be in different urban situations around Europe. But at the same time, through that exchange, through sharing that experiences, we're learning how to become more, how we really bring people together, as you mentioned. And also I have one very interesting comment, maybe like a provocation, because actually like right now, people quite common to talk to talk about sharing. So we share, blah, 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 everything. Of course, also we have that kind of new kind of wave of sharing economy from Uber to flats and so on. I would really suggest to work with maybe more radical idea of the gift, which is not right now so popular as it used to be in 90s, but at the same time it brings kind of refreshing. You are not share. You give because it should belong to nobody. It's just kind of exchange of the gifts. And actually through that, I guess we can really come to very, very rigid and solid, maybe for me it's the only way to critique and certain kind of continuation art as anti-capitalist, because if you go out of capitalist relation, sharing unfortunately not going too far. But gift, yes, but gift is super dangerous things. It really has dark side. And how to deal with that dark side, as we know from Bataille and so on, this is really kind of art of living, you know. Anyway, sorry for my kind of side.
Deviation.
Yeah.
Deviation, yeah. Because now I'm thinking what to respond to Zapatistas, not about gift. We continue, not about gift, because it's very interesting, yeah. Yeah, and of course we follow that main principle by Zapatistas that you have, as Dima said already, if you want to be Zapatista, you don't need to go to Chiapas to live in Caracol or something like that. You have to be Zapatista on your own place, at your home. And we are artists. And our home is art. And we have our, our responsibility. We have our responsibility. And our responsibility is the art, what we are doing, the school, what we are having, and the collective, and the community around us, that's our responsibility. And here we want to be Zapatista as we can be. Because we are not indigenous people, we don't live in Chiapas, we live in Russia, in cold Russia, with our Putinism and such things, and this is why we created kind of method, how to be Zapatista in Russia. And of course we created ourselves, and I'm not sure that Zapatista can agree with our approach, but that's our own, our own way to be Zapatista. And it has several principles, and is it time to?
To maybe show them another piece that is showing our beginning of the traveling into the idea how exactly to build a Zapatista school in the community of artists and activists in Siverskaya village near St. Petersburg.
Yeah.
So that's a great example, and it will bridge to speak about the method a little more with the concrete example.
Okay, let's start with it.
That's a good idea. Let's look at the second fragments of the trilogy. This one is New Dead End Street Summer School of Slow Orientation in Zapatism, 2017.
2017.
Оса и лось в царстве коммунизма. Оса и лось решили в коммунизм войти. Оса влетела в коммунизм, а лось никак не может. «Давай же, лось!» — кричит оса. «Входи ко мне! Тут коммунизм, тут хорошо! Давай же, лось!» А лось рога свои хранит и сбросить их не может.
«Свои рога не сброшу я, ведь то моя идеология».
«Оставь, оставь ты, лось, свою и мудрость, и силу! Стань новым ты лосем и последуй ко мне в коммунизм!»
Но как же я сброшу свою мудрость и силу? Что же у меня останется?
«То ложное твое сознание, лось! Влети ко мне ты в коммунизм!»
Да, ну ладно. О, получилось! Ура!
Мы в коммунизме, лось!
Дебилы.
Ну, вообще странное ощущение, что такая вроде крапива, а вроде как бы техника. Что-то такое, как бы, не знаю, как будто инопланетное, что ли, там. Улитка, кстати. Под листиком. 2. Вот, тут много улиток на крапиве сидит. Я когда бежала сегодня, вдохнула, и у меня залетела в рот муха. И я такая подумала, что ну и муха мне в рот залетела, а потом, ну как бы, ну а что? Ну вот так вот мы встретились сейчас, как бы я открыла рот, и она в него залетела. Это так случилось.
Yeah, that's a short fragment from our... Weird. From our film, which we made together with our young comrades in St. Petersburg, not in St. Petersburg, but in the village nearby St. Petersburg. We rented the house, the big house, the dacha, we call it dacha, and we spent together more than 2 weeks. And you can see we had a lot of people, 17 people all together. And we, our choreographer, our cameraman, our daughter, our cat, everybody all together, and in the end we didn't kill each other, and I guess it was already achievement, And,
thanks to Zapatistas.
Thanks to Zapatistas, yeah. But of course we started a little bit early. We started to read the book by Subcommandant Marcus with the name Another Revolution. We started to read it with all of these young comrades. And it was our first project dedicated to Zapatismo, and this is why for us it was we had very important question. Is it interesting for young generation or not? Because for us, when we met the first time with that book, it was 2002, it was translated into Russian by our very good friend Oleg Yasinski. We were like, wow, how it could be, just new horizons, everything is possible, it was like, but what it can be for them, for young generation. And from the beginning it was like, very interesting, very poetical, very full of metaphors book, but nothing more, But we continue to read this little book, continue, and just, go deeper and deeper, go deeper and deeper and deeper. And in the end, when we went to that village, we were already prepared to practice Zapatismo. Not just to read, but think and find something which is very important for us. And some important things came to the surface, And it was extremely intensive time. And after the 2 weeks, all of us were changed. And during the 2 weeks, we started to create some principles, which is on the list. I have it, but I'm afraid that it's too long. And
it will be printed in the book that is coming very soon. Oh.
Yeah. No. For example, equality. Very simple. Everybody knows that that's important for everybody. But how to keep equality? Because, for example, in our school, we are teachers, we are tutors, and we have our own power, and we have to use our power because we have to teach. Or, okay, let's call it to share our knowledge or to give. No, it doesn't matter. But anyway, we have our own power and we have our own privilege. And our students, for example, they have a privilege to be young, to be in the beginning of their long life. And nowadays, during this COVID pandemic, they have a privilege to be more protected, yeah, because we are fragile now in our. You see, yeah, and how to keep equality here in such situation. And for example, in the film, I'm a film director, and I have my own power. Come on, I have to use this power, otherwise the film never appear, you know. But it has to be another type of power, and it is not like, and there is no any recipe. And you have every day, you have to wake up and practice it. To practice equality. And every day it depends on a lot of, circumstance. And yeah, I can continue, but I guess it's enough.
Obviously.
Olga, there's a very important word that you've repeated, which is comrade, which comes to the notion of comradeship.
Yeah.
Today, I think that citizenship, I mean, it has been and it's still a sign of possible emancipation for oppressed people around the world. But citizenship is also related to the notion of nationalism, capitalism, imperialism, colonialism. But comradeship is an alternative to this form of domination. And comradeship is the way you live and the way you work. Do you think this could be a way to work and to be together beyond dominations or forms of oppression today? Comradeship as a principle, so applying also equality, you know, to comradeship, being comrades.
Дима.
Давай ты, девочка, начинай.
Давай.
Начинай.
You know, comradeship is not only kind of in counter to, as you correctly mentioned, to citizenship, as a kind of notion of citizens, but also quite different from what we have right now in whatever you name it as identity politics, because it's beyond identity. So recently it's actually very interesting because actually even with young generation, even in Russia, it's quite difficult to introduce concept of comradeship, not concept, but to practice comradeship, because everyone insists on its personal belonging, not necessarily through the nationality, gender, but nationality, gender, ethnicity, color of your skin, and everything creates certain kind of separation. So, but for us, I guess what's the difference between, and difference, I will play with it, between many kind of, let's say, US or kind of Western approach, because it brings us proliferation of differences. So the radical question in the West sounds, what's the difference between me and you? And through the difference, we create kind of new form of politics. Comradeship works other way around. What do we have in common? And this is much more, from my point of view, much more radical question. Because right now, everyone obsessed with the differences. And comradeship, it's actually about commons. It's completely beyond. We don't care if you're white or black, man or women, whoever, what kind of your citizenship. But there is certain kind of vision of the future. It was called before communism, you know. That's why comradeship and those who actually demonstrate fidelity to this idea. And then it was really quite radical. How far right now you can develop it, I don't know. Actually, even in the practice of Zapatism, you'll see that the concept of indigeneity, I would say it's quite different, but at the same time, it's also because if we can scientifically speculate on Zapatism, it's a weird hybrid between Marxism and certain form of indigenous cosmology. So that's why it's also, you have certain kind of access, or that kind of injection of Marxism into that kind of, it's not just
vaccine.
Like vaccine, yeah, it's vaccine. Yeah, so yeah, it's a hard question. Yes, if we speak about ourselves, we insist that our collective based on the principle of comradeship. And recently it was also certain kind of, the term become more visible through Jody Dean book on the comrade, kind of conferences and speculations. I think Eflux published something on comradeship, and Oksana Timofeeva, and actually it's kind of certain circle of old comrades who develop and insist on topic which is completely almost excluded. No one uses it. And when we work with our young generation of participants in our school, finally it works. So when it sounds weird in Russian right now to call someone товарищ, but right now everyone in school called товарищ. Пойдем, товарищ, let's go.
Товарищка.
Товарищи не говорят, not female. No.
In many cases, bringing us back to the topic, it's also important in Zapatismo. This is again one of the compañeros, compañeras, compañeroas. They differentiate the gender already through including both A and O into the compañeras, but all of them are comrades per se, and ever since. Yeah, this is the key concept for them as well, compañeras. They don't call each other otherwise.
No, that's true, but at the same time, I would really deny that kind of gender division. So
they underline it.
They underline, yeah, but in Spanish maybe. But in Russian, I guess it's again the principle of the comradeship. There is no gender.
In Russian,
gender
it doesn't
excluded, yeah. Mm.
Beyond the gender. And
beyond the gender, yeah. That's the core idea. Not to strengthen the gender and differentiation, but just get rid of it. You know?
If I may continue with another question, I would say that comradeship is also the invisible ties that are between us. What you can't see, but what you project, the desires, the will. And so hope, love, emancipation, resistance is everything that is also between us. So what do you think would be the missing concept today for being more in comradeship or being more together? What is missing for us to be more in presence of together and together even though we are not always in presence of the others? What is missing today to make that happen?
I can tell you, it's very simple. It was a missing organization, the party. Communist party. I'm joking, of course, but when you talk about that invisible ties between comrades, of course it's party. And the radical party of new type. And actually, if you relied or refer to these notions of comradeship and Jodidin, of course she will be talking about party, for sure. But new type of party. What kind of party? Because party was so incredibly complicated democratic concept. And democratic centralization and so on. I'm told, because I grew up with all that ideas, you know. Right now it's completely unpopular. If you start to speak about it, no one really understands, and you think that you're old-fashioned freak. But the way
but
how...
also we know from the past how many parties have failed.
Sure, sure. No, party politics failed completely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tony Negri explained to us.
I agree that organization is the only thing we're missing.
Yeah, but I guess that what we need the main idea. No, not the party, but the idea. Because, for example, we create our comradeship. Why? Because we are doing something together. We are doing film, for example. And during this process, we create the comradeship. That's for sure. And, for example, in our group, I guess we have comradeship because we have the main idea, you know.
So you suggest idea of tactical comradeship, not strategical but tactical, because doing something it's kind of both. No, it's very interesting actually. I guess in many projects, even without that kind of definitely common in character. It can be, yeah. So people really start to communicate differently.
And to relate on another
Yeah,
level.
that's how you actually quite clearly feel the difference in certain kind of approach. When, for example, you have, like you mentioned yourself as director, which is true, but at the same time, it's not like old school directing. At the same time, building another type of relation, because sometimes you go to institution, to museum, to wherever, you feel quite strong hierarchy, certain form of oppression, silencing, and everything is there, bullying even, you know? You see how people can stand. And what really bothers me is that a lot of super progressive institutions who are right now promoting that ideas of care and blah, blah, blah. While you go inside, you talk with employees, and you see the same kind of bullshit, that kind of repressive structure. And it's too many of that kind of hypocrisy, unfortunately. I don't know how to really say, but at the same time, you go to different places and you see incredible level of whatever we call comradeship, horizontality, when people really feel supported, when it might be someone who organizes as a kind of directing, but at the same time in indirect way, and with an absolute kind of support and respective and listening to the other and changing things immediately. That you see that kind of, that like I before told about party of another type, there are new type of institutions, an institution to come. That's exactly what we need right now.
Well, that makes me think to a Clastre book that is often quoted by Deleuze-Guattari, Societies with no classes. I don't know, Società senza classi, I don't know. Clastre, Pierre Clastre book. And the idea that the organization is not based on predetermined hierarchies and positions of power of individuals, but rather on the flexibility of recognizing who is the more, so to say, capable of doing something in a certain situation. So they talk about, for example, war, and that's where Deleuze and Guattari take the idea of the war machine, and the idea that the leader in a war action is not the general with the signs on his shoulder, but rather the one that in that particular moment is recognized by the others as the one who has more, Now, of course, this can be a complicated model to actually, but makes me think again to the idea of hospitality, because I think that it's quite easy in a group of people who share ideas and projects, artists, for example, and artistic projects also, to recognize who is in that moment the one who is able to give more hospitality to others' ideas, to the group's ideas. And this can change. So when you were talking about, yes, we have the power of being teacher in a school, yes, of course, but only if you, so to say, moment after moment, demonstrate, show, that to the others participants that you are the one who is giving hospitality to the others' ideas. And the moment who someone else become the more hospitable, then the leadership changes. So I see this companionship, this comradeship model as this possibility of changing how the group recognize in some individuals of the group, or in one or more, a certain capability, so to say.
Actually, it's very interesting. Thanks for brilliant remark. Absolutely. We also actually thinking about that. Actually, our also method is diagonal, so to say, because we are quite critical about horizontality because it becomes very manipulative kind of term. Of course, there are biggest problem with vertical thing. That's why we think about horizontality and about culture of that. Actually, it was mentioned organization, maybe of course not party, but maybe Soviet, the council, where actually combines the two political principles of participation and delegation. Representation. So right now we see a lot of the traps of that kind of non-representative politics, because it's built on suspicion. So no one can represent you or me, because if it permanently creates that kind of paranoia of suspicion. And delegation, it's based on generosity and trust. But you had very important things about hospitality. So when people around feel that actually situation, it kind of opened. I'm directing not because I'm so professional, because I'm open to everyone's ideas, which allow me to be delegated for that particular position at this particular historical moment. And this is really very sensitive things where you can develop that political feeling. So you really understand. For example, most of collective fall apart because at certain moment someone executes certain kind of position and losing trust, losing that kind of openness, and then everything is over. And no one tell it. People simply go out. They simply leave, you know.
But Cesare himself is a part of collectives.
Right. You have experience.
What I know from my experience is that this kind of situation can be, very crucial in someone's life and really, give you new ideas and new energy. But they are temporary. They are temporary.
Yeah.
So I am, for example, very surprised that your collective is lasting so long.
We do.
Yes.
But but at the same time, also trust, it's a bit more, I would say, because actually it gives you the possibility of mistake. Because when there is a certain constituency which actually so-called delegate or bring you into certain kind of power, then of course everyone can make a mistake, and then generosity of collective can really make it, rework it together through self-criticism, so kind of open discussion, and re-establish kind of new balance. So that's, guys, we did something wrong, It's absolutely legitimate. And ability to recognize that kind of situation, which really maybe also help to hold more kind of durability. Anyway, complicated issue.
Yeah, the question of hospitality is also to me problematic because, for instance, in the United States or other countries where indigenous people were imposed knowledge and laws that were not their uses, then the land is used in another perspective, and people would think that they are at home when previously the land was shared and experienced by indigenous people, for instance. So sometimes, because we don't know something, we think it's the right thing we're doing. So I would say that in addition to learning, there is also the perspective of unlearning, and it's not something we have been discussing now, but I think this is something you bring in the work. Chto Delat is also a question, and a question is not only for learning, it's for unlearning, deconstructing, and that's also what you do. So I think this is very much part of your methodology, because you don't want to, from my perspective, to give definite answers. It's a research, it's a process. You ask continuously questions for bringing something. And that's related also to the question of deconstructing what we know, what we think is right, what we think should be done. So I would maybe ask you to comment on that perspective, how unlearning is part of your methodology.
No, I understand learning as I understand unlearning, it means, for me, as an artist, to forget what I know and start from the beginning, and to find a new way. And for me, in this case, yes, we are for that. But I don't know what my comrades says.
Well, it's always a process again, and we are constantly unlearning the assumptions, and there are a lot of possibilities we're creating for ourselves in order to achieve those things that we presume that are this A or B or X or Y. But by encountering with others' experiences, it brings every time some new types of knowledges that we never encountered before. And for that we have our school, for that we have our Rosa's House of Culture. And the unlearning with Zapatistas is one of the important methods and things, like the processes for us. Also with our comrades from Lecce, with the project, experimental unlearning project called Free Home University, we recognize the importance of unlearning and redistributing the knowledge, because both projects are pedagogical, and together we created one of the films from the trilogy that is called People of Flower, Salt and Water. And this was, again, for both para institutions, the unlearning process that that lasts longer than just like 2 weeks of experience, right? So yeah, that would be my contribution to that.
I don't know, I feel certain unease and reservation with unlearning, because actually at the same time it's a bit kind of strange to say. Actually, there is an anecdote, you know, we will actually, unlearn become one of the most buzzwords in art world. Everywhere you say something, you should add on, you know, unlearning, undoing, and so on and so on. It's incredible. At the same time, how people really pick it up without any kind of real kind of substance, you know. And with our case, it's actually even more complicated, because actually, you know, like it was also their schooling, you know, their professionalization, which actually belongs to ABC of modernist alphabet of kind of proper schooling, actually. It's actually become kind of a new academic standard, which completely kind of shows that you use the same language as a proper colleagues, you know. And I talked with Claire Bishop, remember, and said, Dmitry, you can't be deschooled or unlearned because you never learn anything properly. And it's true, we're all autodidact, we never went to academia, and so on and so on. That kind of certain amateurish approach, some kind of kids-like, you know, you see something, you're completely surprised because you see bicycle, I mean, like object in the gallery, and you never seen it before. And maybe some people from Western context saw it already 100 times. They know how to use it, what is the references and so on. But you're kind of like a kid, you know, wow, it's bicycle, for what? You have no even idea how it moves. But at the same time, you invent your own usage of this kind of form, you know? And there is something exciting. And that's actually certain freshness of people who are not Westerners. So we are not Westerners, so that's why I can talk about it. But at the same time, right, as Olga said, it's kind of get rid of that certain kind of dogmatism, not to repeat yourself. That also can be somehow called unlearning, or kind of breaking with certain kind of rigidity of your formation, to become permanently kind of escaping certain kind of fixation.
I would like to you know, catch this problem of putting like an antagonism, learn and unlearn. And I think this oppositional vision has to do with conceive learning as catching, capturing, reaching, possessing something, and unlearning as erasing or annihilating, bring to zero. I would try to imagine that learning, in fact, and unlearning is a sort of a process, and maybe we can say that when you learn something, of course you get something, but at the same time, if you don't consider that getting as a final result, as an end, so you possess something and you keep it as it is, but you are ready to change the deep meaning of this thing is not an end, but it's a mean. It's not a result, final result, but it's rather an instrument, a tool that you can use for something else. Now you are at the same time not reproposing the opposition between the two terms, but you are rather using a sort of a game between the two. So to transform ends into means towards other ends and so on and so on and so forth. So and this again is another possible models. I think artists can do this again. A possible model of not being led only by the idea of possess something. And an art piece is something that is there and it's definite, it's closed, and I possess it, either me being a museum or an art collector, but rather it's something that I can use and maybe transform in this sense, to unlearn, to take something out, but in order to use for something else, not just to erase in a negative.
That actually connects very well to your principles of the making films zapatistically, the principle of the process versus the result. Transformed, yeah. The process is way more important than the definitive kind of formal answer.
I think we still have a few minutes with Théo.
I would like to add just one last question.
Yeah,
and maybe
go ahead,
before
please.
that, a small comment. I think that what Chto Delat's work is also about is not the materiality of the work, but the materiality of the work in relation to others. So that's why you have a practice, and that a practice is different from only producing objects. And objects, when they are charged with ideas and relations, they have another meaning, of course. And there's an important moment in the film that we saw an extract of about the footprints, what we hide in the pockets, and other shadows of hope. From the film's diary, it is written that Stavros Stavridis is a messenger from another world. Stavros Stavridis wrote Common Space in 2016, that was then translated in other languages, as well as Common Spaces of Urban Emancipation, very important books for activism today. This is one of the major reference around the project that you've done. And in the perspective of Chto Delat's research, why is Stavros Stavridis a messenger from another world? And that will be my last question.
Thank you, Théo-Mario. It's actually very easy, Stavros, of course, you correctly mentioned him as a key figure in kind of anthropologist and also activists who are actually very much involved with all kind of grassroots and local struggle in Athens and beyond. But inclusion invitation which we made to him, because actually through our conversation we immediately recognized that Stavros was behind key 8 project, and caravans which Greek activists sent to Chiapas, and actually was actually the whole film. Maybe it's not so explicit through the title or inside, but I guess it's visually very explicit. It's about schools. Actually, the whole lecture, when we invited Stavros to speak about Zapatism, was actually about how Greek activists built a school and social center in Chiapas to actually educate. It was not actually the school, it was a special school for the school teachers who should actually then come to different schools in Zapatista communities. And Stavros, as an architect also, was actually a very important person. Actually, we knew many Greek activists who traveled to Chiapas. Actually, dentists are amazing, so they create so many dentist services in the Chiapas. But at the same time, of course, with Stavros also, and his laboratory for urban commons, we have kind of quite long relationship and very comradely, and actually we learn a lot through that experience and talk together. And Stavros was super important for that kind of contextualization, because all that kind of particular, I guess we moved into Italian film, it was actually built on bridging together to imaginary, because at certain moment Italians or Greek activists or Russians or whoever heard that something happened in Chiapas. And it was just their imagination what they happened, apart from their communiques and certain kind of, as we said, artistic production and news, you know? And then they start to travel there. Someone earlier, someone later, someone never came there. But they create certain imaginary. And the same we would like to compare, completely different, how migrants moved to Europe. So, of course, they haven't been neither to Greece, nor to Italy, nor to Spain, whatever. And of course, they were in uncomparable condition before they start their departure. Yeah. But at the same time, they also imagined certain places. And that, for us, that actually to bring together that kind of imaginaries, and actually also they imagine ideal Europe where everyone can be equal, happy, have a decent life and dignity, was far from reality. At the same time, what Greek and Italians experienced in Chiapas was also quite different from that kind of reality of that horizontal, you know, egalitarian community. Frankly, to say the Zapatista territory is super closed. They are not hospital in the way, let's open all the borders and welcome all migrants here. No, just opposite. It's very high secured zones where everyone who is coming through the procedure of control and so on. It brings us into long discussion of that security from revolutionary point of view. You know, they're not just playing games, they're really people with guns, you know. And who need to protect that kind of achievements of the revolution. And this was very interesting, and Stavros was actually, I guess, in the film, unfortunately, I guess it makes sense to publish his lecture fully online. It was 1 hour and a half. I really was, it broke my heart because I need to cut it in the film. You have only 15 minutes from that intensive talk, unfortunately. And then it was discussion, another 1 hour, you know. Unfortunately, it's in Greek, it needs to be subtitled. It's quite a job, you know. But anyway, so this question, yeah, and I guess you also understand that reason of his appearance. Actually, in Italian film, it was another guy, super, really great person, Christian from
Christian
Venice.
Peverieri from
from Venice. Yeah.
And he took part, just to give a little bit of a context, he took part in this movement Tute Bianche, which were and the group of Tute Bianche called Già Basta, which means enough is enough, that they were clearly affiliated with the Zapatistas methods from the beginning of their political activities, and they also contributed a lot to the local communities, collecting some resources, bringing possibility to build a public medicinal garden there, and and many other things, among many other things. So Christian came to Castiglione d'Otranto when where we were having our session with doing films of People of Flower, Salt and Water in 2019, and he was the protagonist of the struggle. He was the one who witnessed it, and he brought this knowledge not from the book, from his own experience, and he was speaking about that experience. Yeah.
I think we will now thank Théo-Mario for being with us.
Thank you,
Théo-Mario,
you.
participating
Thank you.
to this dialogue, and thanks from Palazzo delle Esposizioni to Theo. We hope we can meet soon in person.
Sure.
And I also take this moment to ask for the third fragment of the film that is taken from Gente di acqua, sale, farina, people from flour, salt and water. That was shot in Lecce, in fact, in Salento, in Italy, in 2019. Okay, thanks again, Theo.
Thank you.
Theo. Bye-bye.
Колян, пропрыгай.
Lavorarlo per fare la farina dobbiamo fare questo processo che viene detto sbramatura per recuperare il chicco nudo. L'embrione del germe è in questa posizione. Questo poi sono le riserve amido e proteine del grano di tutti.
Now, we have some more questions that come from our network of connections of people, and maybe, I mean, it's most of these questions that we have already talked about. Maybe we can take this opportunity to try to summarize also this conversation. Now, this is the first question. What is your view on the relation between art and politics? Do arts present a view of its time and push the thinking of society forward? What is art's role? It's a very big question, maybe.
A very big question.
Try to
very big
make a little synthesis.
Yeah.
Very difficult question. Of course, yes. Because before, just several years ago, I was like, yes, I know, art has changed the world. Art has its own power, and all together we will change Yeah, it was like obvious. And we were thinking that we are doing art because we keep this in our heart. But now situation changed. And now I guess that when we are doing art in our own way, as we already discussed today, it means that we are creating, just not step by step, but like, I don't know how to call this, very slow movement, new type of politics, And I believe that one day it will work. That's what I can.
You want to add something?
Agreed.
About the relation of art and politics, yeah. I guess it's many. One, I absolutely agree, because there is a certain kind of situation when art can do some more simple work, like propaganda, for example. And I mean, to be in the service of social movement. For example, I don't know if I can say it here, but I think I can. Because when we talk with Ileana, and she saw first, Ileana is director of State of Concept, who actually produced our exhibition. And she said, Dmitry, I like it, but I guess it may be not real kind of Chto Delat film. I said, why it's not Chto Delat? It's too documentary. And too much kind of, she didn't say propaganda, but too much schools, solidarity schools that interviewed. I said, okay, it's propaganda of solidarity education. That's why teachers speak in the Stavros and, all that kind of voices. And I don't mind how far we should, in every step, to be artistically elaborated and especially develop our own language. So maybe sometimes you really need something to make at least modest things, to make things more visible as they deserve to be in this world where no one sees them and wants them actually to be eliminated, to shut down. At the same time, that certain kind of potentiality, because actually we are perfectly have that kind of dissidences with kind of that instrumentalization of art and forms of politics. Because I guess the big difference that art is not simply different from life, it has another temporality of transformation. In the politics, there is certain kind of immediacy. With NGO, you have that business plan, then report, and you see what has happened. With art, you don't know what will come out of it. And you don't have to. Because we know from the past that so many things was completely different, as we were completely invisible and then become kind of big phenomenon which transform through curriculum generation of artists, thinkers and citizens and people, That's super important.
But besides that, we don't exclude ourselves from the living society, from the politics from below. And of course, we as artists, professionals, graphic designers, people who know how to do a film montage, we participate into the real politics that basso. And of course, we serve the needs of the political communities with which we are in solidarities, with anti-fascists, with feminists, all these agendas, and we serve as designers, we serve as clip makers, right, for example. But this is not the way the art work, as Olga was explaining, and Dima was referring to. To make art, you really need to proceed in a different ways. that are not considered by the real politics because of the temporality. The temporality is completely different. Yeah.
Okay, next question refers to Article 27 of the Human Rights Declaration. Everyone has the right to freely participate and fully participate in the cultural life of the community, to enjoy the arts and to share scientific advancement and its benefits. What do you think should artistic and cultural processes aim in order to contribute to the realization of this? We have already said a lot about it.
Yeah, we try.
No, important is to organize, right? Again, back to what Dima was saying, organizing together, like really getting together the reinforcement and trying to proceed with the steps, with the programs, like to program what's in advance within the communities of people who are interested into these procedures. So bringing people together, discussing, making steps, action.
But you know, actually, this actually it's a bit kind of with all human rights. You separate it with the issue of class structure, and actually, people deprived from access to the culture because it's a privilege of people who has certain form of free time, and free time guaranteed through certain type of income. You know, those people who work 12, 14 hours, they have very rare moments when they can play music or draw a picture and something like that. And that only through radical social transformation of society, you can really reach that certain kind of equality of access. And that actually also very much depends whom culture belongs. Is it, because it's still class issue. We go into the opera, who is visiting theaters, and who is deprived, not because he or she is actually not have capacity to catch. No, they maybe do, and definitely do. But they have no that ground which allow them to have that right now what we call privilege. That's why it's a privilege to sit here, it's a privilege to go to opera, it's a privilege to be exhibited. So we really need to get rid of that privileges, you know? And then we'll see how the culture will blossom.
And it's a privilege to be in Rome, for example. Right now, a lot of people in Russia who are artists, activists, thinkers, they are deprived from going, visiting the colleagues.
To cross borders.
To cross borders at Théo-Mario is just not feeling well. It's exactly one of those privileges.
The third question, I think, is similar to something that Theo also has asked, and has to do with your practice in relation with urban contexts. What you have taken from this kind of context?
It's a difficult question, because actually, if you talk about Russia, I would definitely right now insist on certain kind of that counter-public notion, and even more that kind of dissidency, as we used to know in Soviet time, where actually with almost total closure of public sphere for different voices, you have to find kind of alternative ways to make them survive for the future, I don't know, or just like, it's difficult, it's quite another discussion, but at the same time, how it's urban, yes, it's urban communities, it's actually, for us, yeah, we too urbanized, we don't know actually much communities which are not urban. Maybe it's also our problem, you know. And actually, Zapatista, it's not urban community, which create completely different type of translations into different particular urban experience of that particular peasant forms of life and commonality. But right now, I would say it's quite interesting, because that certain kind of new type of particular youth culture with all that kind of different, whatever we call it, scenes, you know. There is one scene, there is another scene, what they can share. That's why actually for our House of Culture, I would say it's our contribution to the diversity of urban communities, and particularly for communities which otherwise would hardly find the space for their articulation or even feeling togetherness, you know, from LGBTQ or for some certain kind of Marxist circles. So that's for us, as long as we can, too important to have that kind of giveaway space, where physical space where they have possibilities to stay and do certain kind of work they need to do and not to interfere.
Last question. How to weave local actions into global movements? How does your practice interact with the Sustainable Development Goals that are supposed to change the world within 2030?
Or even before.
You know, it's a special expert, it should be paid extra at the city council, you know. If they want to invite us, we can write some kind of recipes, but we need some research. I don't know. So it's $100 question, really.
We'll make a special session.
Yeah, we'll make a special session. How to save the world urgently till 2030.
In 5 steps. No, it's a difficult, very difficult question. Really, it requires a lot of considerations and more kind of sort of material-based approach. The question is huge, so we need to focus on why this question was. Addressing us. But yeah, as we were saying, we were doing...
Well, in a way, I think that the whole conversation tonight, this afternoon, has been somehow about it.
Yes, in a way.
So,
but
the answer...
This is our contribution.
Yeah, only short steps, only small communities, that's what we can change. No, it's, I started to ask myself, and the answer is like this.
Short steps, small communities,
yeah,
and slowness.
You're right.
Participation, togetherness, comradeship.
Yeah, and you know, and hospitality, of course.
Hospitality. Yeah.
And to be open and wait. It's so, you know, it's the most important thing when you know that somebody is just sitting and waiting. Because, no, for example, we have a lot of students, I mean, our young comrades who are very shy, you know. But when they are with us, one day they start to speak because we never push them, but just wait. Sorry, that's my answer for a question.
It's a very good answer. Okay, I think this might be enough. No?
Yeah, just one thing which we want to add, that we want to say thank you very much for invitation, of course. Thank you very much for our gallery.
The gallery apart.
The gallery apart, yes, and of course people who was helping us to do our films. First of all, people in Greece. Yeah, continue.
Like me to mention all people?
Yeah, of course, yes, why not?
Nikos, Despina, Iliana, Electra,
Stavros,
Stasius, and many others.
And many others, yeah, because I really feel that they are with us right now, you know, and it's...
As people of Flower, Salt and Water are with us as well. They are, in fact, in Lecce, but yeah, a lot of help and support we feel from their side and vice versa. I would like just to have a little announcement. Of course, come to see our show,
yes.
Right? To the Gallery Apart, Rome, if you are passing by Rome.
And there's also something that's coming, the book.
Yes,
famous
and
book.
Exactly, the book is coming. It will be focused exactly on our Zapatista method, all our reflections, in continuation with many incredible contributors, including Iliana Focchianaki, including Marco Baravalle, including Christian Peverieri. And the book is edited and curated by Alessandra Pomarico of Free Home University.
Okay. Well, thanks to you, Olga, Dimitri, and Nikolai, and from Palazzo Esposizioni. We're really honored and pleased to have had you here. And I think it was an interesting, maybe a bit too long conversation, and we extracted from you what we could. Okay, thanks to Theo again for his participation. Oh, I think he's still with us. You want to add something as just a goodbye?
I would just say goodbye. Arrivederci.
Ciao.
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 Ciao, a presto.
Grazie a tutti quelli che ci hanno seguito fin qui. Grazie alle traduttrici, grazie a Carla Schiavone e a tutti quelli che hanno partecipato alla organizzazione di questo incontro. Da Palazzo delle Esposizioni, come si dice, buonasera a tutti.
What is culture for? Have you ever thought about that? It's everything we do beyond mere survival. It gives meaning to our perceptions. It brings humanity together through emotions, imagination, thoughts. A group of over 40 cities started an online initiative to advance the right to take part in cultural life as an essential condition for a better society. We're launching a global proposal to promote everyone's right to discover, enjoy, create, share, protect, and participate in culture. It lies at the root of all our connections and in our common future on this planet. Sharing a rich cultural life together empowers us to face challenges and crises and is vital for the rebirth of our cities and communities.